Ryzen updates and its Achilles heel. However, it's not all bad, there is good news. But first, I will need to explain a few things for you to all understand. I will have sources below for further reading. To begin with, we need to understand what is the CCX. CCX in Ryzen is the core complex. There are two CCXs in a CPU, which gives it 8 cores, 16 threads. You have one CCX which consists of 4 cores, which has a shared L3 cache known as a victim cache, L1 cache and L2 cache. However, this tends to be private. The reason L3 cache is known as a victim cache is because there is an overflow of data from the L2 cache. L2 cache puts the extra data into L3 cache. Essentially, it's an overflow of capacity. Now, as you can tell, the L3 cache is 8 megabytes, shared between all 4 cores in one CCX. This also goes for the other CCX, so there's 2 of them, both identical. Now, you're probably wondering, how does one CCX connect to the other CCX? Well, it uses AMD's Infinity Fabric Connect. It's essentially a bus that allows information to be requested and transmitted between the 2 CCXs. However, this Infinity Connect operates at 22 gigabits per second, which is by far way less than the L3's cache maximum speed of 175 gigabits per second. However, things here get a little bit more problematic. One of the dilemmas, and you're probably thinking, what do you mean by dilemmas, is latency. A result from hardware.fr, which they ran a benchmark using a beta version of AGESA64. So I would take this with a grain of salt, since they will run in a beta program, there could be a few mishaps here and there. They noted when they were doing some benchmarks that the latency of Ryzen 1800X was 98 nanoseconds, which is 40% higher than the 6900K. Now, furthermore, when they made the timings a bit higher, from 11, 11, 11 to 15, 15, 15, they noticed an additional 4 nanoseconds. Not significantly bad, but it does show that latency is a part of the problem, although there is more to go on. You see, if Ryzen needs further information for a particular task, it will check its cache hierarchy within one of its CCXs, meaning it'll go from L1 to N3 cache, and if it doesn't find the information that it needs, it'll have to send 2 separate requests simultaneously, one to the other CCX and one to the memory controller, which uses the AMD Fabric Interconnect to exchange information. These operations take place at the same time. The biggest problem here is that it needs to wait for the other CCX to respond via the Fabric Connect, which has latency issues, and because it's not that fast, much lower than the L3 cache, it takes time to get the data across. This creates a penalizing time frame, which in case adds more latency, and it causes a cache miss. Now, if you're wondering what a cache miss is, here's an explanation. Cache miss is a state where data requested for the processor by a component application is not found in cache memory. It causes execution delays by requiring the program or application to fetch the data from other cache levels or the main memory. Now, for people who don't know what cache is, it's essentially the fastest RAM possible for the CPU. L1, L2, and L3. That's how it kind of works. L1 is the smallest but most fastest. L2 is medium speed and it's a bit bigger, and L3 is the biggest but it's also slower. Now, normal RAM, normal RAM pretty much is the most slowest of all. So you're going from a really slow form of RAM to a super fast cache. It can be problematic sometimes. However, latency is part of the problem. One of the biggest issues that a lot of people have been finding is the RAM frequency and the speed it operates, but I'll dive more into this and why it does affect Ryzen. The following came from a Reddit user who asked how CCXs communicate together, which I briefly discussed. Also, this sheds some light in the speed of memory controller and implications on AMD's Infinity Fabric Connect. So pretty much they asked here, can you tell me how the memory controllers are linked to each CCX? The response was, the Infinity Fabric connects each CCX to uncalled devices, such as memory controllers, PCIe controllers, SATA, USB, etc. It is a 256-bit bidirectional crossbar, and runs at the speed of memory controller, i.e. using 2133 MHz memory. The memory controller clock speed of 1066 is the clock speed of the fabric. Using faster memory increases fabric speed. Now, a person by the name of DocSwag, thank you for the post and your input, has written actually a pretty good of his interpretation. So basically, it seems that the clock speed at which Infinity Fabric used to connect the CCXs in Ryzen is governed by the memory clock speed. People have noticed quite noticeable performance improvements from overclocking memory on Ryzen. This could be part of the reason. If we do a little math, we find out that transfer rate of Infinity Fabric between CCXs is 256 bits, which is the bidirectional crossbar, times 1066, which is the clock speed of the fabric. And what do we get is 34 gigabits. I'll have the mathematical equation on the screen. However, if you just overclock the memory to 2933 megahertz, the transfer rate becomes 47 gigabits. This is quite a substantial increase in bandwidth, and I'm guessing that explains some increases in performance from memory overclocking and benefits to gaming. What I'm gathering from this is that the faster memory you have and the faster speed of the fabric, the faster the transmission of information can be exchanged between the two CXs, resulting in faster and better performance. But I'm going to keep going here with another interesting post that AMD Ryzen put out there, running a Ryzen 7 1700 at DDR4 3400 MHz. Now, keep in mind this is dual channel. Furthermore, if we look at the picture here that AMD has posted on Twitter showcasing the Ryzen 7 1700, it's at DDR4 3400, which is DRAM frequency clock speed is 1700 MHz. You need to halve it because of dual channel. So pretty much 3400 divide 2 will give you 1701 DRAM frequency, as you can see from there. Now, by doing that mathematical equation that I had on the screen, we will get 54.5 gigabits. I would like to note that I believe having better and faster RAM frequency will result in better gaming performance and demanding tasks, due to the faster speed on the memory clock, which benefits the interconnect fabric for data transmission between the CCXs. I will additionally be showing you some photos made by a YouTuber called Mindblank Tech, showcasing his benchmarks running at a higher frequency and showing different timings. Now, what I can tell you is by looking at the actual results, you can see that by having faster memory, it actually does beat the i7 7700K that's overclocked to 5 GHz. That gives you an idea that Ryzen may have an Achilles heel, but it does have a fix, and it could actually dominate and close the gap and beat Intel. Now, you're all probably wondering, well, what about the good news? Well, here we come. Motherboard vendors and AMD are working together to optimize even further. This means that motherboards such as MSI is working on a new BIOS update for one-click optimization tool. So you can see the picture here that they're pretty much trying to see if they can optimize the RAM settings and whatnot to offer you the best solid performance there is, which is very good. Hopefully, this gets out very quickly and more benchmarks and results can be obtained from different people. I can't do it myself. I don't have a kit with me. So if someone can send one to me, I would really highly appreciate it. Now, in other great news in regarding RAM, AMD is reportedly working on AGESA microcode, so if I've incorrectly pronounced that. It's improving RAM compatibility on the AM4 platforms, which is great news as there currently are a few issues with Ryzen's RAM compatibility. If they can figure this out and solve RAM frequency speed problems and fix latency that is currently an issue as well, then they can do more than just to close the cap. They could dominate Intel, but take that with a grain of salt. We don't know 100% of yet. Now, another thing before I end the video here is talking about the Windows 10 update that I believe happened on March 16. It comes from a Reddit user called 100-13. It's pretty much stating that with the update, it has partially solved the scheduler issue, which AMD comes from the horse's mouth, has said that the thread scheduling wasn't an issue. It was more or less that they have to optimize their code a bit further. So that tells you that some other people beg to differ, saying that it's still a scheduling problem. So with time, we'll know more. So far, all I can say is that we'll have to wait for more software optimization updates and other architecture optimizations. And then over here, I'm just showcasing you a picture from a Chinese website showcasing how the update sort of did make a few fixes. So you can see that before, bit slower, and then after, there's an improvement. But as I'm coming to the conclusion of this actual video, what I can say is that Ryzen is still a new architecture, that it has flaws, not to mention it still needs tweaks and fine-tuning as well. However, it's good to know that having faster memory and clock speed and higher frequencies from RAM definitely does benefit the user in gaming and also other high-performance tasks. Not only does it allow you to run a better performance in gaming, but also smoother gameplay. However, I'm still skeptical on how they will further fix Infinity Interconnect Fabric. One theory could be that a software or firmware fix, or it could be Ryzen Generation 2 with an architectural update. I couldn't tell you, to be honest. I'm not an expert in hardware, but what I can tell you is that I hope this has helped. I believe that Ryzen could definitely overtake Intel. I kind of hope they do, won't deny it. Sorry, Intel, I've got to say this. But if it has helped you, please subscribe, give me feedback, help to grow my channel, and I thank you very much for watching this video.